It was a cold, rainy night when I found myself driving down an almost deserted highway, miles away from any town. My headlights barely cut through the thick fog that seemed to cling to the world like a wet blanket. Exhaustion was beginning to set in, and my eyelids weighed heavy as I scanned the road for any sign of a place to rest. That's when I saw it. A flickering neon sign that read, "Sleepy Haven Motel." The sign was old and some letters were burnt out, but it promised vacancy and, more importantly, a respite from the relentless night. With relief, I turned off the highway and pulled into the gravel lot of the motel. The Sleepy Haven looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. Its once vibrant colors were now faded and peeling, and the entire structure emitted an air of neglect. I hesitated for a moment, but the heavy rain and my growing fatigue nudged me forward. I parked my car and hurried to the reception, sheltering myself from the rain under a small creaky awning. The front door squeaked ominously as I pushed it open and stepped inside. The lobby was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb, casting eerie shadows across the worn-out furniture and stained carpet. Behind the front desk stood an elderly man, his gaunt face barely visible in the dim light. His eyes, however, were vividly bright, almost unnervingly so. He gave me a slow, crooked smile as I approached. "Room for one?" his voice rasped, breaking the thick silence. "Yes, please," I replied, trying to shake off the unease settling in my stomach. He handed me a key with a shaky hand, the metal tag reading, "Room 13." The number sent a small shiver down my spine, but I brushed it off as superstition. I thanked him and headed down the narrow hallway to my room, the floorboards creaking under my steps, whispering secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. The room was surprisingly clean, albeit stuck in a different era with its floral wallpaper and heavy dark furniture. I locked the door behind me and finally allowed myself to relax. I decided to take a quick shower before hitting the bed. That was when I noticed the first oddity, a small, almost imperceptible, red stain in the bath tube. I leaned closer, touching it lightly, with my fingertip. It was dreed, but unmistakably red. Trying to convince myself it was nothing sinister, just a remnant of some accident with nail polish or makeup, I quickly showered and settled into bed. But sleep eluded me. The silence of the motel was oppressive, filled with a multitude of small, unfamiliar sounds. An irregular dripping, the distant creak of floorboards, a soft rustling that seemed too close. As I lay there, the room felt increasingly colder. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, trying to ignore the growing feeling of being watched. I turned on my side facing the window, and that's when I saw it. A shadow, or what seemed like one, flit past the curtains. I sat up, heart pounding, staring at the fluttering curtain as the shadow passed again, this time slower, more deliberate. I leapt out of bed, yanking the curtain aside, but nothing was there. Just the empty, rain-soaked parking lot and my lone car. The rational part of my mind insisted it was just my imagination, spurred on by the room and the stories old motels like this could tell. Yet, the unease persisted. Determined to prove to myself it was all in my head, I decided to explore a bit. Maybe the familiarity with the place would help settle my nerves. I stepped out of my room, the hallway now feeling narrower, the shadows darker. As I walked, I thought I heard whispers. Pausing, I listened, but there was only silence. When I resumed walking, so did the whispers, always staying just at the edge of hearing, impossible to make out. I reached the end of the corridor and noticed a door slightly ajar. Curiosity overcoming my fear, I pushed it open. Inside was what looked like an old maintenance room filled with various discarded items, old lamps, furniture, boxes. But what caught my attention was a large old-fashioned mirror standing against the far wall, its surface dusty but intact. Drawn to it inexplicably, I stepped closer. I could see my reflection, pale and wide-eyed. Then I blinked, and in that split second, the reflection wasn't my own. I saw a woman her face twisted in an expression of sheer terror. I stumbled back, heart racing, and when I looked again, it was just me in the reflection. Shaken, I left the room quickly, almost running back to my own room. Inside, the sense of dread enveloped me stronger than before. I knew I wouldn't sleep, and I couldn't stay. Packing my things, I rushed out of the room, down the corridor. The whispers now loud, insistent. I threw the keys down at the reception desk, the old man nowhere to be seen, and didn't stop driving until the motel was nothing but a dark shape in my rearview mirror. Even now, years later, the memory of that night at the Sleepy Haven Motel haunts me. I can still hear the whispers, see the flash of terror in the mirror, and sometimes on cold, rainy nights, I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed.